You can see that this is a fairly short Perek, 24 psukim, but it's very action-packed.
Okay.
And there's a medrash that says Divrei HaYamim is like a person dropped a pearl and is sifting through the dirt till they find the pearl. And the pearl, it represents David HaMelech. So that's why we go through, Perek Aleph, we go through from Adam straight through to Yisrael, Yaakov, and then in Perek Bet, really glad I got this source, and then we go right to the sons of Yaakov, and we go right to the ancestors of David, the line. So when we get to Perek Gimel, right, we've actually come to the place that we wanted to get to, and this is David. Okay. So now we're going to, in this Perek, we have basically two parts. We have David HaMelech's children, and then we have the descendants of David who became kings, one after another. But what happens here is that it goes right through those kings, and it comes out at the other end. What Sefer Divrei HaYamim does that no other Sefer does is that it goes through all of Jewish history straight through to the time of Bayit Sheni. So we get to Ezra and Zerubbabel, and even after that. And here, like this. Here. So here, I printed up two charts from the Dot Mikra, which show you the sons of David here, the sons that are born to him in Hebron, the sons that are born to him in Yerushalayim. That's the first part of this chapter. And the second part of this chapter is the kings that come from David. David Shlomo goes right through this list. And you see here, all the way up to Yoshiyahu, who's basically the last fully functioning king figure, although there were 4 kings afterwards. And they were 3 sons of Yoshiyahu plus 1 grandson. Now, I did make a chart for you, this one. I actually think I sent it to the chat. Let me see, I think it's in the chat. So you could pick that up right with you. This will go back a little bit. You could check your media thing, or I'll resend it. I made this chart because the last few kings are very confusing. I don't know if I made it less confusing. I tried. Yes. Okay, there we go. I'm going to resend it so you don't have to look for it. I may. There we go. So if you look in your chat, I have this chart for you. You see Yoshiyahu, and after Yoshiyahu, the next king is Yehoahaz, and then Yehoiakim, both his sons. After Yehoiakim, his son Yehoiachin rules, who's also known as Yechaniah, and Yechaniah is taken into exile. And then Tzidkiyahu becomes the last king, and he's the one who's blinded and brought to Babel. Okay. And so we have these 2 parts of our Perek here. Goodness, I lost it. Here we go. 2 parts of the Perek: children of David, and then the kings that descend from him, And there's many, many names here. And every single name, we said many things about Divrei HaYamim. Everything has to be darshaned. Nothing is meant to be taken just the way it is. And it's really quite crazy because you look at it and you say, oh, it's a short Perek, but it's an extremely complicated Perek. There's a lot of interesting stuff here. So we'll go ahead here. Pasuk Aleph. Ela hayu b'nei David asher nolad lo b'Chevron. Habachor Amnon la'achino ma'Yisraelit. Sheni Daniel Abigail Carmelit. Pasuk Bet. Hashlishi la'Avshalom ben Maacha bat Talmai melech Geshur harabi'i Adoniyahu ben Hagit. Gimel. Hachamishi Shvati la'Avital Hashishi Yitram la'Egla Ishta. Pasuk Dalet. Shisha nolad lo b'Chevron vayimach sham sheva shanim v'shisha chadashim v'shloshim v'shalosh shana malach b'Yerushalayim. So this is the first part of our discussion, and that is David HaMelech has 6 children in Hebron and six wives. Each child is from a different wife, and he rules in Hebron for 7 years. Now, another of these interesting features of Divrei HaYamim is that there is no, like a lot of the things that we learned about in Sefer Shmuel are just glossed over, hinted at perhaps, not discussed. We know all these stories, but we don't talk about them. So, for example, the fact that David was only accepted on the first 7 years by the tribe of Yehuda, that's not here. He ruled for 7 years. The fact that Avner, the Sar Tzava, the commander-in-chief of Shaul's army, after the death of Shaul and his 3 first sons, put Ishbosheth, another one of Shaul's sons, probably his 4th son, put him in power over the rest of Israel. No mention of it, no discussion. So you see that there are certain things that are not part of the discussion. Later on, we'll see that the entire Malchus Yisrael is like a total non-entity here. The whole northern kingdom is not really discussed unless it is relative to a king of Yehuda who had interactions with the kings of Yisrael. So it's very, very focused. And this Perek is especially focused. And so we want to see who are these people and what's going on with them. So first of all, the name David gets an extra yud in Divrei HaYamim. It seems that the yud is a sign of Hashem, the name of Hashem, and it's given for chashivas. Interestingly enough, it's what they call a palindrome. I heard this from Rabbi Rosner, which is very cute, that David, without the yud, goes the same way, and so does his father Yishai, and so does his son. He has a son later on, whose name is Natan. 3 generations of names that go both ways. Very interesting. I never would have noticed that, but it's cool. Now, if you notice, the first 2 sons are people whose story we know. Amnon, who was the son of Achinoam, a Yisraelit, is the oldest son, right? And the second son is Daniel, Abigail Carmelith. And now we have to stop and say, who is Daniel? We never heard of Daniel. Misa Daniel. Now, if we go to the parallel story, I have so many things open, I want to make sure I find the parallel story. It should be here. Okay. We're on par there. So in Shmuel, the son of Abigail and David is called Kilav, and here he's called Daniel. And the question is why? And you see the Rashi here says, Bimkom acher hu koreto mishneu Daniel. Lama nikra shmo Kilav. Amar Reb Yitzchak. Shahayu leitzanei hador omrim, minabel hayta Abigail me'uberet. Ne'afach klasterov nidmel aviv. B'rabotenu amru shaya machlim pnei mefivoshet b'halacha. So this is a beautiful medrash in Tanhuma, and it's interesting because Naval was a very evil person. And when David is stopped from murdering him and his household by Abigail, and afterwards, when he finds out about that, he has basically, it seems to be a stroke, and he dies 10 days later. And then David sends for Abigail and he marries her. So there is a halacha, which is probably based on this story, that before a second marriage can take place, you have to wait 3 months, because what if the woman is pregnant by the first husband? There shouldn't be any questions of paternity. So it's not clear, because I've seen in different places that did David wait the 3 months or not? Here it seems to say, this is the Tanhuma, the Medrash says, that he did wait 3 months, although it had not been enacted as a takana, as halacha, but because she has a baby right after the remarriage, the late Sanei Hador, the scoffer, said, oh, it must be Naval's son. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu made sure, right? Late Sanei Hador, min Naval, she's pregnant by Naval. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tziba, Amalach Mimuneh al Yitzirat Havlad al Turato Amalo Lech v'Tzorato v'Dmut David, tells the Malach who's in charge of the looks of this baby that he has to look exactly like David HaMelech. And that's why when people saw him, they said, Kulo Av, Kil Av, Kulo Av. He's just like his father. He looks just like his dad. Chip off the old block. Ma Tamadoma Kilav, Shaya Kulo Av, Shakala Roe Omer, David Aviv Shazeh. And this is the same story that we had with Abraham and Yitzchak, because people would say that Yitzchak, Abimelech was right after Abimelech took Sarah prisoner. And so the late Sanim, the people who have nothing to do but to make fun, and this kind of scoffing that people do is very, very dangerous and very, what's the word? It causes many, many terrible things. And we know today how much slander and libel is running around out there. In any event, Kadosh Baruch Hu made Yitzchak look so much like Abraham so that no one would say anything that Sarah was pregnant by Abimelech. And this is the same story here. It's an interesting medrash. Now, according to the Mefarshim, right, Daniel, so the reason he was called Daniel is because David said, God judged me for not attacking Naval, Daniel. And so that was his real name. Now, we don't hear anything more about this guy, except that we find in the Gemara, in the list of people who never sinned, Kilav. And this is very interesting, because who are the people, the four, it's very famous Gemara, the 4 men who never sinned are Kilav, his grandfather Yishai, and Amram, father of Moshe, and Binyamin. And it seems very interesting that these 4 great people who never sinned are not actually great Jewish leaders themselves, but they are closely related to great Jewish leaders, which seems to indicate, if you think about this, that a person who is in a leadership position is not going to be able to be one of these people who never sins. If you want to, be with people and deal with people, it's not so simple. According to Chazal, the son of Abigail and David, Daniel, alias Kilav, was not interested in the kingship, did not want to have any part of it. He just wanted to learn Torah. And so he did good his whole life. So there's something for us to think about, right? We do have these 4 people who, even though they were so great and they never sinned, that they weren't the actual leaders. Interesting. Anyway, we have a very interesting thing here. Why is Avshalom listed differently? We have this Amnon lachinoam, Daniel labigail. That seems to be the style, right? In Pasuk Gimel, Shvatya labital, Yisrael Egla. Why doesn't Absalom get la Absalom le Maacha? And Rabbi Yaakov, in his commentary here, has a very interesting comment. Here he says, here it is. Why does Absalom have a different style? And he says, if you look in the Malachim, you always see that a king has, we're always listed by the name of the mother. Shem Imo, whatever. Shem Imo, whatever. And later on, when Bathsheba comes to the king, Vatavo Bathsheba el HaMelech, Vayasim Kisei La'em HaMelech, Vateshev Liyamino. Okay? And Rav Yaakov says there was a title called Eim HaMelech, right? Ima Shel Malchus, we say about Ruth. You have this idea. But who was Macha? Macha, I don't know. I don't know who did that. Must have been me, but didn't have any intention to do it. Okay. In any event, Macha was the daughter of the king of Geshur. Geshur is a kingdom up north in the Lebanon area. And the whole story with Macha, I don't know, I think we brought it out when we discussed Absalom, is that Macha was a Eshes Yafat Torah. She was a beautiful woman captured in war. And that's why the whole story with Tamar happens, because Tamar was born before Macha converted to Judaism. So she is the daughter of the Yafat Torah that first time, and therefore she's not considered an actual daughter of David. And that's when she tells Amnon, who was trying to rape her, that David will allow him to marry her, which is a question, but the idea being that she's not actually his sister, even from, I didn't even touch the mouse. Like, no, someone playing with that? Very odd. So you see that Amnon is actually only a half brother by the father, but because of the status of Eshes Torah, she wasn't actually his sister at all. And Absalom was a full son of David because Macha had by then converted, and it was a different story. But Rabbi Yaakov says, still not going to be Eim HaMelech because she was a Yifat Torah, and Absalom ben Ner, if he had ruled, she would not have gotten this title of Eim HaMelech. So we are not giving her the same title as the other sons. There's a very interesting comment here on Le Avshalom. I have to find it for you. This is the Malbim says, the Radak says it's just like to Avshalom, but the Malbim says, it appears to me that the Lamed is there to say, Lo Avshalom. What does Avshalom mean? Father of peace. And this is an editorial comment. You were not the father of peace. You were an enemy of peace. You disrupted, you destroyed, and you corrupted. Lo Avshalom. Very beautiful comment on him. Okay, back here. So who is the next one? Adoniyahu ben Haggit. Now, Adoniyahu, we remember all these backstories. None of these people turned out well except Daniel / Kilab. Amnon rapes Tamar. Absalom kills Amnon, rebels against his father, rapes his father's concubines, he gets killed in the battle. He's a completely evil person. And then you have Adoniyahu ben Haggit. Adoniyahu also thinks he's going to be the king. At the beginning of Malachim, we find out who Adoniyahu is. Adoniyahu ben Haggit misnaseh lemar ani amloch. He said, I'm going to be the king. And here, this is one of the psukim that I find is fascinating in terms of chinuch, right? We should always pay attention to this. And it says here, his father had never made him sad his whole life, saying, "Why did you do that?" I actually find this very interesting because I think asking a kid, "Why did you do that?" is a pretty mild rebuke. I have said meaner things to my kids in my life. No, why did you do that? It's not even necessarily bad, but he was never called out on anything. And the Gan who Tov Torah Ma'od was also very handsome. Now Rashi has comments here. He was like Avshalom. There was never anyone as handsome as Absalom. He was like from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. He was perfectly good looking. That's why they became arrogant, because they were good looking, right? And we had this comment here about Absalom. And she bore him after Absalom, which sounds like Chagit he was the next in line, but Rashi says Kolomar Gidla Torah Tarbutcha Gadla Ima Absalom. He was raised in the same culture that Absalom was, which is, you're so handsome, you could do no wrong. And this is how you raise spoiled and entitled children, by never denying them anything. And that's why Shlomo Melech says, Chosech Shipto Sonei Beno. A person who withholds discipline hates his son. I always find that so interesting because the English, they always translate that as spare the rod, spoil the child. And it never really works for me, because spare the rod is nowhere near as strong as Chosech Shipto. He holds back discipline, because the rod just means you don't beat the kid. And if you don't discipline the child, if you don't teach them right from wrong, it's not you spoil the child. It's sonei beno. It's as if you hate your child. Much, much stronger in the formulation of Shlomo Melech. And that is why all these guys went wrong. And Adoniyahu, an interesting comment that I believe, let me think. I'm trying to remember who says it. Here, the Malbim, Imo Garmarlo, Shagadla Toliroa, right? No, yeah, this is the Malbim. The Malbim says Daniel, because people talked about Daniel being Naval's son, and because he was not interested, that's why Adoniyahu said, "I'm going to be the king," and that's how he got into trouble. Now, we don't know anything about Shvatya or Avital, although later on we find out that Shvatya is the ancestor of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who was the redactor of the Mishnah, who was called Rebbe. So this is also a very, very important lineage. Hashishi Yitram Egla Ishta. And the sixth one was Yitram to his wife Egla. This is the only one who's called his wife. So Chazal say, who is Egla? We don't know who she is. And it's basically, everyone decided, Chazal say, this makes sense to say this is actually Michal bat Shaul. And why is she called Egla? Hihi bilvad ishto. She hayta chabiba alav ke'egla. It's a term of endearment. Now, if interesting that Shimshon also calls his wife Eglati. He says Ulei charashta Eglati. The Timna woman that he marries because they bother her and torture her to get the information about the riddle. He says, if you hadn't plowed with my calf, you would not have found out the riddle. So he calls his wife an Egla. It's a term of endearment. Another explanation is that she was the first wife. And that's what she's Ishto. The Mitzuda says they were all Ishto, none of them were concubines. So now we have 6 sons in Hebron. Now, the Chazal asks this question. We say he ruled in Hebron for 6.5 years and 33 years in Yerushalayim, and that comes together to 40.5. But when it's counted in Malachim, it says 40. Where did the half a year go? Two explanations. Perhaps because he was punished after the event of Batsheva and Uriah, and he had Sarat for 6 months. And the other explanation is that 6 months he was running away from Absalom, so he wasn't exactly a king. Now, the next pasuk Heva Ela Nodula B'Yerushalayim, Shema v'Shova b'Nasan u'Shlomo Arba Ala bat Shua bat Amiel. So again, who's Batshua? Who's Amiel? We never heard of these people, but we do know that Shlomo is a son of Batsheva. So Batshua must be Batsheva. Batsheva is a son of Eliam. So Amiel must be Eliam. It's exactly the same letters. What is happening here? Again, it is in the interest of Ezra to make David great again. I don't know if we had Mada, we have Maga, make David great again. So we don't want to talk about Batsheva and we don't want to talk about Eliam. And so we're going to change the name Batsheva. It's very close to Batshua. And now we're good. So this is one of these editorial things that is happening here. Now, apparently, David and Batsheva had 4 sons, Shema, Shobab, Nasan, and Shlomo. According to what it looks like in the story that we read originally in Shmuel Bet, Shlomo was the oldest son. It was actually the baby that was born first, and that baby dies. And the next son is called Shlomo. So the question is, why is Shlomo at the end? So the Radak says, because it's closest to Batsheva, who is that Aim HaMelech, mother of the king. It's also part of the style of Divrei HaYamim because we're reading through the things that are less consequential till we get to the prize, and Shlomo was the prize. And so we get there and we say, okay, that's it. And it's interesting because the children that are born to Yerushalayim, we have this whole list here, we find that Yerushalayim is now going to be the center of the Jewish nation, and it starts from here. I have very fond memories of Menachem Begin, who I adored, who said, I don't remember which, I think he said on one of the talk shows like Face the Nation, Meet the Press, one of these things, and he was talking and he said, you have in America Washington, D.C. In Israel, we have Yerushalayim, D.C., Jerusalem, D.C. Like, what does that stand for? D.C., David's capital. I always remember that. Go Menachem Begin. And it is actually true. And it's something that we always have to keep remembering when like the naysayers are out there telling us what's ours and what's not ours. Yerushalayim is ours from way before this, centuries and centuries ago, and it was David's capital, and the archaeological evidence is overwhelming. But who cares about the truth? I heard a very interesting idea also that if you look in the Shemona Esrei, right, the bracha for Yerushalayim, right, ends with David. Now, like, Yerushalayim berachamim tashuv, right, and then at the end it says, right, the kisei David meheva tachid. That it's part of the bracha, and so Yerushalayim and David are totally intertwined. Now we have this list of 9 sons of David born to Yerushalayim. We don't hear the names of the mothers. Yivchar Elishama Elifelet, Noga Nefeg Yafia, Elishama Eliada Elifelet Tisha. Now, if you notice, I think no, I didn't skip. You have Elishama and Elifelet. We have two Elishamas and two Elifelets, which is a little odd. But here is 9. Now, if you look at the parallel, should be here. Nope. Okay. This should be Elish Mata Yilodim LaRushalayim, Shavua Shabbat Nathan Shlomo, the 4 sons of Batshua, and then Yivcha Elishua, Nefeg V'Yafia. Now, if you notice Elishua, okay, and we had, are we jumping around? We had Yivcha Elishama Elipelet, and here we have Yivcha Elishua Nefeg V'Yafia, Elishama Eliada Elifelet. So we have only one Elifelet, and instead of Elishama twice, we have Elishua, and we don't have the other guy, Noga, that's in this list. So there's a couple of explanations here. One, possibly that the first Elishama died, and the second one was named for him. And the similarly, Elipelet, one died and was named, the second one was named, right? And another explanation is that Noga died young, and Elishama was called Elishua. So this is different Elishama. And Elifelet died young. So then you have to ask, why are we going through these 9 sons if 2 of them have died, or even more? And that is also, again, it's for the glory of David HaMelech, that each one of his sons is important, even if they died young. Now, Pasuk says, Kol b'nei David milvad pnei pli lakshim v'tamar achotam. Pasuk Tet tells us these are the sons of David, right? And also Tamar. Now, why do we mention Tamar? David probably had many daughters as well. There are lots of wives there, but apparently we know Tamar, and we've unfortunately followed her sad story, and so she's mentioned as well. And now we're going to go to the second half of our Perek, which is going to be the list of the kings of the house of David. And it goes one after another. Again, Divrei HaYamim is like, okay, this is not where we're going to spend our focus. We just want you to know how it goes. And if you follow the genealogy, which is really actually some very fascinating stuff going on here, you will see, again, we are not looking at the kings of Israel, the kings of the northern kingdom. They don't interest us. We're going straight through. But unlike Melachim, we're going to continue after where Melachim ends, straight through to the time of the Second Temple, and hopefully way into the future. And I'll show you how that goes. That's good. Ben Shlomo Rechavam, Abiyah Beno, Asa Beno, Yoshaphat Beno, 4 generations. Yud Aleph, Yoram Beno, Haziyahu Beno, Yoash Beno. And we have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 generations. And if you recall, Aschaziah was not a big tzaddik or Yoram, but Rehavam, Asa, Yoshaphat, these were good people. And Yoash, if you recall the story of Yoash, Yoash was the boy king. For 6 years, Atalia ruled the land. She killed out all the people of David's line, and Yoash only survived because the Kohen Gadol Yehoyada and his courageous wife Yehosheba stole him away with the nurse and hid them in the Beis HaMikdash for those 6 years until he was old enough to make him king. So for 6 years there is no real king here, and you do see all this gets expanded on later. We find out that because they made a deal, an arrangement with with the house of Achav and Izebel, that's when we got Atalia. There's a very beautiful medrash that says this. I don't know. Here it is. Rashi brings it. From Shlomo to Yoash was 8 generations. The Fisher Ad David Shayazaro Kalabi May Yoash Alidei Atalyahu Kedichtiv B'Sefer Zeh. But Takam Padi Daber Alashon Dabar Alidei Sam Hamavis Amad B'Tfila Amar Zeh Hamizmor Lamantzech Al Hashminit Shmona Nimnim Ador Shmini Hashiach Shem Kigamar Chasid. So in Tehillim, okay, that should be Perek Yudbet. Perek Yudbet Lamantzech Al Hashminit. So David says that Hashiach Shem Kigamar Chasid. The Medrash says that David saw that in the 8th generation, his whole line was going to be wiped out. So he davened, Kigamar Chasid, this is going to be the end of your Chasid, and that's how Yoash was saved. And then we go on the next 8 generations. Amatzyahu Beno, he was a good guy. Azariah Beno, Yota Beno. Now, Azariah is also known as Uzziah. Uzziah was a good guy. You see that most of the kings of Yehuda were good people. Uzziah made a big mistake trying to bring the Ketorah, and he became Mitzorah, if you recall the story. One of these stories that you find in Divrei HaYamim and not actually in Malachim. But these were good people. And now, if this becomes rocky, Achaz Beno, rotten guy. Chizkiyahu, tzaddik. Menashe, rotten guy. Amon, rotten guy. Yoshiyahu Beno, another tzaddik. So we have a list of, now it's getting very rocky. Good guys, bad guys. And again, it's 8 generations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And after Yoshiyahu, now Yoshiyahu was the great last hope of Malchus Yehuda. He was a big tzaddik, and he really tried to bring back, the Atara, the greatness of the Jewish people. But he wasn't able to do that, and he died after he made the mistake and went to war against Mitzrayim, Paranacho. And he had 3 sons that became kings and a grandson, but none of them were successful kings. So it's almost as if he's the end of the line. And the Medrash Rashi brings it, right? Umin Yoash ad Yoshio cheta wrote Shara David Yoshio benav kula volchin labajon. Zenerad, Zenikru Enav. So David is looking, he has Ruach HaKodesh, he sees the second set of 8 generations. He sees is also there getting lost. This one gets killed, right? And this one gets his eyes put out, and he davened again. Al Hashminit, Al Dor Hashmini, again on the 8th. You notice in the Tillim, and this is Perek Vav, Lam Natseach, Bin Ginot, Al Hashminitz, right? Al Ba'apcha Tochicheni, please Hashem, don't rebuke me in your anger. B'shvil tfilato nishtayu b'nei Yakim, u'v'chol sefer Tillim ein yotir al Hashminit ela elif shnayim. Okay, now the rest of this medrash we'll leave till we get through the end of the Perek. It's very interesting. But you see here in Tetvav, we're moving on to the children of Yoshiyahu. And this is where, if you recall that I gave you that chart, this is where it gets very confusing. First of all, B'nai Yoshua B'chor Yochanan. Now, who's Yochanan? Yochanan is also known as Yehoachaz. Yehoachaz was not the B'chor. He was the second, but he became king first. Now then, the Sheni is Yoakim, who was older, but he became king after Yoachaz. And the third one was Tzidkiyahu. And he became king after the son of Yehoiakim, Yechaniah, was taken into captivity. And Revi'i Shalom, right, we're not really sure if he was king at all. So let me just show you the charts, okay? This is the chart that I prepared, and I do think I tried to color code it so it would be like, okay. So Yoshio was king for 31 years, was killed by Paranacho. He's our last great king. There were 3 of his children who became kings, The first one was Yehoahaz, who was the second son. He ruled at age 23, but only for 3 months. He was taken away to Egypt and he died in Egypt. Bad guy, nothing to be done with him. The next king was Jehoiakim. Now, Jehoiakim was so bad that he was killed by gangs and never buried. If you remember the burial of a donkey, that's Jehoiakim. But after Jehoiakim, who was also known as Eliakim, after he died, his son was put up as king, Jehoiachin, who was also known as Yechaniah. Now, Yechaniah was king only for 3 months. He was also a Russia, and he was taken into Gullus. Okay, and we went through all this at the end of Malachim. So it's by a way of being a review, but it's confusing stuff. So I hope I'm not boring you by saying it again. Yechaniah was exiled. He was very young at the time. Okay, and he is destined for a very nasty end. Okay, and afterwards, Nebuchadnezzar put into power Tzidkiyahu, also known as Matanya, who was the third son of Yoshio to become king. But he became king after his nephew was taken into exile. Yechaniah is a nephew of Tzidkiyahu, and he has a terrible fate, right? He's actually not a bad guy, but the king gets very angry at him, puts his eyes out, and drags him, kills his sons in front of him first, then drags him off into exile, where he dies. Lovely. So the end of Malchus Yehuda is very, very sad. Now, if you look at the chart, lots of good charts. House of David chart. Okay, so here, this is from Dat Mikra. You see here, Yoshio Yochanan, also known as Yehoahaz, right? And then Jehoiakim, after Jehoiakim, Yechaniah, and then Tzidkiyahu. We don't really know who Shalom is. Who is Shalom? This is one of the things that's difficult about Divrei HaYamim. Like, what? Where did he come from? And who is he? We're not sure. Now, the next chart that I gave you, also from Divrei HaYamim, is the children of Yechaniah, and this is where the Perek ends. And I want to go through this quickly for you. I'll show you in the psukim, but first look at the chart. Yechaniah, okay, and this is the beauty of this story. And this is one of the most beautiful things about the story is that Yechaniah is told by Yirmiyahu that he's going to meet a very sticky end. Okay. Hi Hashem. This is Hashem speaking through Yirmiyahu. If you would be a signet and I would be like stuck with you, I would throw you away. God is so angry at Yechaniah. I'm going to give you over to the people who want to kill you, all the people you're afraid of. Nebuchadnezzar, Retzar. I'm going to send you away with your mother. He's too young to even have a wife. Send you with your mother. You're going to want to go back. You'll never come back. You will never come back, right? And you will be despised and clean. You're a useless vessel. No one wants you. You'll be thrown out, right? Eretz, Shimid Vashem. Listen, land, to what I'm saying. Koam Hashem. That says God. Kitzvur Isha Za'ari. Write him down as barren. No children from this man. Gever lo yitzlach miyam will never succeed. Lo yitzlach mizaro isha sheva kisei dav Moshe lo be. We're done. That's the end. There will be no children from this man. Now, this is really hard stuff. So, the Gemara, okay, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says exile atones for sins, right? And it goes through this psukim that I just read you. But then we find out, and this you're going to see in the Perek in a minute, Ubnei Yechanya, Asir Shaltiel. Wait a minute, God just cursed him that he should be barren, never have children. And now he has one son, possibly two. Now, the sons of Yechanya, the same as Asir Shaltiel, okay? According to Chazal, Asir and Shaltiel is the same person. This is, again, one of these things that's very hard to understand from the original text. Because look at it says here, okay, we're going to go from Tetzvav, B'nei Yoshiyahu B'chor Yochel, Sheni Yom Yaakov, Shishat Kiara V'Yishalom. We saw that Yoshua has 4 sons, 3 of whom become kings and a grandson. Ubnei Hoyakim Yechanya B'not Tzidkiya B'non. If you looked at the chart, okay, I want you to try to hold this in your mind. In the chart here, you see that Yehoiakim has Yehoiachin, his son. He also has a son named Tzidkiah. This is not the same Tzidkiyahu who becomes king and becomes blinded, and he's essentially the last king of Yehuda. This is a different one. So let's try to hold our heads together. Ubnei Yechanya Asir Shaltiel B'no. Now there is a pause here. There is a Zakev Katan. Ubnei Yechanya Asir, comma, Shaltiel B'no. So the Chazal say, right, Shaltiel is the son of Asir. Asir means a prisoner. So he was a prisoner, Yechanya, so he named the son the name Asir. Shaltiel, there's a lot of different drash, I asked from God, but there are many Chazal who say the boy's name is Asir Shaltiel, and it was only one son, that Yechanya was in prison, and when Nebuchadnezzar died, his son had Rachmanis on Yehoiachin. He was very young, and he brought him his wife, and he set him free, and he fed him for the rest of his life. That's what it says at the ends of Malachim. So he has a son. Now, this, beyond anything else, is a tremendous message of hope, of renewal, of tshuva for the downtrodden and defeated generation of the Second Temple, Shivas Tzion. Now, I guess I'm older than most of you, but I remember, when the 6-Day War, let's say, after the 6-Day War, so many people went to Israel, made Aliyah, but the vast bulk of Jewry did not move. And so they asked me to write an essay in high school, right, about the return of Ezra and Nehemiah. I still have this in my yearbook in Hebrew. I must have had a lot of help from my dad. I don't remember. But comparing the Shiva Siyam of Ezra and Nehemiah to the return today, again, people are not in such a rush. And Ezra is trying to galvanize them. This is it. Look what happened to Yechanya. He was cursed never to have children. And that curse was removed because he did tshuva, because he suffered in exile. And not only that, but his children are our great hope, because they're going to lead us to the great leaders who are going to be descendants of David, and so on until Mashiach. Okay, Pasuk Yechet. Malki Ramufudaya v'Shen Atzar Yikamya Hoshama Nedzavia. Interesting names here. If you want to go through them, anyone who's looking for names, some interesting stuff here. Nedavia I kind of like. Ubnei Pedaya Zerubbabel. Oh, we found somebody we know here. Pedaya's son was Zerubbabel. Shimi, Uben Zerubbabel, Meshulam, Hanani, Shlomi Tachotam. Get a girl in there. So then we're going through all these generations. We'll come back to Zerubbabel in a minute. Bechashuva, I kind of like that name too. But Ohel Berechia, Bechasadia, Yushab Chesed Chamesh. Okay, so these are the 5 sons here. Uben Hanania Platia, Bishaya, Bnei Rafaya, Bnei Arnon, Bnei Avadia, Bnei Shechania, Avadia, I really like that name. Ubnei Shechania, Shemaya, Bnei Shmaya, Chatush, V'Yigal, Uvaria Chatush sounds like some kind of Israeli endearment. V'Yigal, Ubariach, Un'Arya, V'Shafat Shisha. Uben Na'arya Elyo Enai, which is just beautiful. Chizkiah Bazri Kam Shlosha. Ubnei Elyo Enai Hodav Yahu. The Eliashiv Playa Vakuba Yochanan Delaya Anani Shiva. Now, if we go back to the chart, because otherwise we just get lost in the names, not this chart, not that chart, this chart. The descendants of Yechanya, Aser Shaltiel, they make as one person, 6 sons. Pedaiah has 2 children, Zerubbabel and Shimi. We are not so interested in Shimi. Okay, we know about Shlomo. These might be all girls, according to the Das Mikra, but we have Zerubbabel. Now, Zerubbabel is also called Ben Shaltiel. So the question is Zerubbabel the son of Pedaiah or the son of Shaltiel? So the Mefarshim say, well, it's very possible that a son can be called from the name of his grandfather. We have seen similar things, in which case Zerubbabel, right, was actually the son of Pedaiah, but he was the son of grandson of Shaltiel. But we always hear him as Zerubbabel ben Shaltiel. So it could be a number of ways to understand that. And there's actually an interesting, who says this? I like to quote the right thing. The Ibn Ezra. The Malbim brings the Radak, who says this is a grandson. But the Ibn Ezra says, Pedaiah, Shaltiel died without children, and he was a brother to Pedaiah. And Pedaiah did Yibum and called the child on the name of Shaltiel. I don't know where the Ibn Ezra got that from. It's very strange. But anyway, Zerubbabel is a very, very important personality because he is the leader of the Jews coming back in Shivat Sion. And you see, here's a direct descendant of David HaMelech, which is a very, very important thing for the people to know. Now, if you go a little bit further, Zerubbabel's son Hananiah has all these sons in a direct line to this group of people, a direct line to this guy Elyo Enai, which kind of is so beautiful. And then this Elyo Enai has 7 sons. 1, Obadiahu, Eliashib, Playa, Ikub, Yochanan, Delaya, and Anani. And the last one, Anani, means clouds. So what do we do with this interesting lineage? Okay, the Medrash says, goes through all these names. This is Tanhuma in Parshas Toldos, goes through all these people and says, until now you're told, right, who these people are. Mihu Anani. Who is Anani? Zeh Melech HaMashiach. So in other words, the lineage that you're seeing here is taking you to this very specialized future, way past the Second Temple period, to the eventual real Mashiach, and his name is Anani, Shenemar, and it goes through a bunch of quotes. And there's Shiva. It says that there were 7 sons there, right? Right? But Anani Shiva. So these are the 7 here. Mahu Shiva, Masha Katsu b'Mashiach. Shenemar ki mi baz liyom ktanot b'simchi b'riyat ha'evan havdil b'yad Rubel Shiva. So there's a lot of different, and we're running out of time here, we're out of time. There are a lot of different quotes. I just want to show you one because it's in Haggai, it's in Daniel. A lot of esoteric references to Mashiach. But this one you might be familiar with because it's Haftorah on Hanukkah and Baalotcha, talking about the candle. And Zechariah says, Zedvar Hashem el Zerubbabel lemor, lo b'chayil, lo b'koach, ki im beruchi amar Hashem tzvakot. Right? This is a sign for you, Zerubbabel. You're not going to prevail with an army, or with power, only with the spirit of Hashem. Mia tahara gadol lifnei Zerubbabel mishor. All of you, the opposition of Zerubbabel, you will be flattened into a plain before Zerubbabel. The Hotzias Eben Harosha, Suot Chein La. We're going to bring out the rock, the foundation stone, and everyone's going to be yelling, Chein, how beautiful, how wonderful, right? And this is Mi Buzz Liyom Ketanot. This is not in the Haftorah. The Samchuot Ha'Eben Habdil B'Yad Zerubbabel Shiva Ele Ne Hashem Hema Yishotutim Chal Aretz. People who think small things are happening here, they're going to see this great Eben B'Dil, a special rock, 7, and the eyes of God are on it, looking all around the land. Right? And then again, it's beautiful messianic verses. Now, what about Anani, white clouds? And that is in Daniel. I don't have this for you. Aba'aru im Anani Shmaya. So that this in Daniel, there is this message that the Mashiach will come in clouds, and this is sort of the chapter which gives you like the greatest insight into Ezra's view. Like, now we've taken you right from Adam Arishon in 3 chapters, all the way to David HaMelech, all the way to Melech HaMashiach, Shi'avo b'mheira b'yameinu, and yeah, so we're gonna stop here. Let me stop this screen share. And anybody have any thoughts, questions, ideas? Like this kind of, there's a crazy sefer where all of a sudden there are coming out of here all these interesting messages.
A lot to digest.
It's so interesting to me. Like, I look at it, it's a short Perek. Then I started researching it, and I was like, oh my goodness, there's so much in here. It's crazy stuff.
Really I think I don't have energy to hear the answer, but I really have wondered about that chen and the stone and what that's about.
Yeah. It's one of these messianic prophecies. It's very, very hard to explain, but apparently, that when they would see this rock, they would be yelling, oh, how beautiful, how beautiful. We don't really, a lot of the things, particularly in Zechariah, it's, what's going on in Zechariah? Some visions there that have they're really, really far out. Now my voice is really gone.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Fascinating.
It's really interesting stuff. And this one, I was surprised, because we're going through the sons of David, we're going through the kings, and all of a sudden we're zipping along. Anani is Mashiach. I never heard that before. I love it. I think it's great. We could use Mashiach around now.
Hey, thank you very much, Esther. Good to see you. Be safe.
Thank you.
Okay, guys.
Have a good night.
News.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care then.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.